Uh, yeah. You already know I'm trained to go. It's about 8 o'clock for my favorite show. All the latest news on your radio. Had to start a wave, then I changed the flow. Y'all know who the best is, the Urban Collective.
Yes, and we are the Urban Collective Show. I'm super excited for this segment, as always, when we have our celebrity guest interviews, introducing you all to some amazing moguls in the city of Boston. I'm really excited to introduce you all to Miss Chynah Tyler, who is a Democrat of the 7th District, representing us all as a state representative. Chynah is a Boston native, a graduate of Northeastern University for undergrad, and really, I think deserves a standing ovation for being such an amazing representation of Roxbury, and what it's like to be a millennial who's out here thriving and doing amazing things for her community, living beyond herself and providing a voice for different generations, all within one platform. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super excited again to introduce you all to Miss Chynah Tyler.
Hey, welcome.
I'm so ecstatic to be here. Appreciate that.
Chynah, tell the people a little bit about you.
Yeah.
A little bit about me. So again, thank you so much for having me. This is my second live podcast style interview, so I appreciate you having me, and thank you for being interested in my work, and thank you to all the viewers and all listeners for tuning in and listening to what I have to say. Hopefully you like it, and hopefully it's something that you're able to jump onto and join the movement. So a little bit about myself. Again, I'm Chynah Tyler, state representative of the 7th Suffolk District, which includes Roxbury, Dorchester, Fenway, and the South End. Born and raised here in Boston. I'm a very, very proud Bostonian. I still live here in Roxbury. I recently became a state representative when I turned 26 years old. I've served for about 2 years now.
Nice.
A little bit about my roles in the State House. I serve as the vice chair of the Public Health Committee. I serve on a couple other committees as well, public safety, education, a couple Ways and Means, which is kind of like the bank account of the state.
Okay.
And I'm also the chair of the Boston delegation. So a little snapshot about what I do.
Keeping it light.
My mom, I have an 8-year-old daughter. Shout out to Kaylin. Hi, Kaylin. I know
Hey.
she's not watching. She has a phone, but she's not watching. That's just a little bit about me. So thank you for asking.
That's amazing.
That's
So
good.
mom, state rep,
Yeah.
Boston native, a daughter, a friend to many.
Yes.
How do you juggle it all?
Yeah.
I don't think about it. I just move. It just got to get done. I know what needs to get done, and the urgency behind the opportunity that I have before me. So I never think about it. I'm excited to do it. So
Really?
I mean, if you love what you do, you don't have to work a day in your life. So I'm
That's
loving what
true.
I'm doing right now. So I'm excited.
So
awesome.
is there anything that takes over and something else ends up losing in part of your life? Is it family? Is it work? Or
Yeah.
you always say somebody has to lose.
Every day's a balance, you know.
Balance, okay.
Sometimes I lose. I don't get enough sleep. That's probably me. But at the end of the day, it's about balance, and I'm learning that as I go. So
Yeah. What inspired you? So I mean, let's back it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, where'd you go to school? You're a Boston native, but like, what was that academic journey, community journey like, leading you up to the point of being a state rep?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, born and raised in Roxbury. I live right in the heart of Roxbury, right in Dudley Station area. I went to the charter school right on Humboldt Avenue, K through 5.
Okay.
And my family was a normal family. My mom raised myself and my older brothers. I have several of them. I'm the youngest of the bunch. And moving on to middle school, seeing my mom trying to make sure that her sons, which all black men living in the city of Boston, trying to navigate the city in general. I learned a great deal from my mom. My mom is my superhero. And unfortunately, when I was moving on to middle school, all excited to get a locker, finally walk to school. I didn't have to take the bus, a little bit of independence. My family changed, the dynamic of my family changed. I happened to lose my brother, which is a story that we all can resonate with, and that changed a lot for my family. However, I had opportunity to go to a really good school. And I'll tell you about the school, and I actually changed the dynamic of like my family and changed my focus.
Really? Okay.
I remember we were really, really not the richest people back then. We used to always walk to Dudley to get to wherever we need. That was back then when they used to have transfers, so we used to get
Yeah,
transferred.
oh my God, I love it.
To go to Russell to get on the
Yep,
train
to
and
get on
to
the
where we
train.
needed.
Yep.
And my mom met a gentleman handing out some flyers for a school. So I was zoned actually to the Lewis Middle School, which was right near my home. And, you used to go to school where you
close to where you live,
to your home.
Yep.
And my mom didn't want me to go to that school because that school was very close to the vicinity of where I had lost my brother. So she was looking for a different option for me. So she met this gentleman handing out flyers, and we went to the interview. We went to the orientation that weekend. And all the things that my mom loved about the school, uniform,
parents in uniform,
7 a.m., 7 p.m., all
Yeah.
that stuff, everything I hated, she loved. She's like, oh, you're going here. Like, if you get into the school, it was lottery based, you're going here. And that school happened to be Roxbury Prep. And a gentleman handing out the flyers, his name was John King, and he actually ended up serving for President Obama as a Secretary for Education. So education actually saved my life. I felt like if I didn't have that school and that opportunity, Lord knows where I would be today. So I went there for middle school, and learned to love it. Some of those people that worked there, they're connected with me to this day. They're probably some of my most #1 supporters. Moved on to high school. I actually went to a really good school. Ended up closing down. It didn't do very well. It was a charter school. It was called Roxbury Charter High School.
Yes.
So it was interesting because a lot of my friends that had went to the Lewis Middle School and different other schools in the area, I had went to Roxbury Prep and was probably one of the only kids in my neighborhood that went to that school. When we got back together, it was much different, the learning experience that we had. And so I ended up going to a different school because it just didn't fit me too well. My mom probably felt like I could be challenged a little bit more. I was doing extremely well. I was getting all A's. I got the inaugural honor roll and all these things. And so she was just like, no, this is not working out for you. You're not done with school at 12 o'clock every day and hanging out. And so she ended up changing directions. I ended up at Prospect Hill Academy out in Somerville. And then simultaneously, I actually went to the Crimson Summer Academy, which is a summer emergence program for high school students, pretty much. So I went to school, all school year, regular high school, and in summertime, I was living on Harvard's campus for 8 weeks, pretty much getting prepared for college. And in between my education that I had up until high school and the Crimson Summer Academy, I ended up graduating high school in 2007. I ended up earning a full scholarship to Northeastern University as a tour scholar. So I was on a president's scholarship. It was free, so free is for me. So I loved it. I didn't know anyone that went to 4-year college. I was the first in my family to go to 4-year college. So everything was a first for me. It was real interesting, going through that process. My mom's like, "What's this papers?" I'm like, "It's fast for you guys." She's like, "They need my social. Why do they need my information?" I'm like, "If you don't sign it, I'm not going to go to school." So it was really good. I went to Northeastern. I studied criminal justice, and I minored in law, policy, and society. And I focused on those 2 issue areas because I had lost my brother to gun violence. So I figured, those would be the avenues in which I can use, my education platform to be able to make a change. Graduated college supposed to be 2012, but I ended up having my daughter when I was a junior. At Northeastern. I was actually just telling her the story today because she was being a little, sassy 8-year-old, a little ungrateful. And I'm like, listen, I had you while I was in school. I had my daughter when I was taking classes. I had her on a Wednesday, and I can remember going back to school right back on Monday, and like it never happened. I graduated a year early, 2011, and I worked for the Bureau of Prisons for a while, State House for a while. I went corporate for a little bit because those weren't paying too well, and daycare prices aren't very low. They're not very cheap to have a kid in Boston. So and then I ended up being where I am today. I'm as a state representative as of 2016, serving in 2017. So that's journey. Me. Snapshot.
I mean, the most expedited version of all the details. No, but truly, that's amazing, right? Thinking about that projection, and again, I'm sorry for the loss of your brother too, right? When it makes me really think about how life is so fragile, and in many ways, trauma becomes one's opportunity for success and to thrive, right? So you said it, losing, a gift and a curse. So it's just losing your brother was super traumatic, and I know very, very sad, and but then that pushed you in a different direction, right? And it motivated your mother to say, absolutely not. You have to go to a particular kind of school, and then to change that trajectory. So what do you think about where you are now?
I'm very excited and blessed to be where I am today. If you look at the statistics as far as I'm African American, where most African Americans end up, a lot of them aren't elected officials. So I'm very, very blessed and very, very grateful, and which is very humbling for me. And I'm very just blessed to be where I am today, totally, to be honest with you. To go back to the violence thing, we have a huge issue with violence in the city of Boston. It wasn't just, my brother's loss. That was actually the beginning of my experience in losing people that I love to gun violence. I've lost some of my closest friends and family members to violence. So a lot of people that are supposed to be here with me today experiencing the state rep situation, because I'm a state rep, but my entire unit, my family, my friends and family, we're all in this role that aren't here with me today, and I feel some type of way about that. So I use my life experience to be able to serve as a platform to help elevate the lives of those that should be here with us today. So.
How do you cope with it? Like knowing what you're dealing with on a personal level, but then having such a public role, right? Like, and your personal story, I would imagine, walks with you every day, right? It gives you so much purpose, but how do you juggle it and how do you process?
I mean, we're resilient people, man. I've been through so much, and so I just use my job to be able to create change and make an impact, so that the next young girl, African American girl growing up in Roxbury doesn't have to experience what I experienced growing up. So if you see through my work, a lot of my work is making sure that I build community and build safe places for children to play, and build fun places, things for them to do, and make sure that their school, that they're having a good academic experience as a whole. Because I had that opportunity growing up. If it weren't for those things, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's how I cope through my work, and I'm happy to do it. So,
wow. So when did you realize that you wanted to serve the public? Was it postgraduate or was it before that?
Yeah, I mean, I learned about it when I heard about it, when they asked me. I didn't know very much about politics prior to getting into it. I mean, I knocked doors for my friend. He ran for office for state representative, and I just, because he asked me, I didn't really I said, all right, sure, I'll do that. I know about you. I can tell some people about you. That's fine. But the rep that served prior to me, she was there for longer than I've been alive. I actually turned 30 this year. I was really excited about that. I keep saying that because it's like a life come for me. But she served for 30 plus years, and she had decided to retire after doing great work in 30 years. So the seat was open, and there were two individuals that were already in the race, and they were like on the highway with the race. Like they were all had campaigns, organized teams, like you name it, endorsements, money, they had it. However, you guys are Bostonians. You know how it feels when you grow up in your neighborhood. Your neighborhood really belongs to you. And my family and people that I know and I love in Roxbury and in Boston in general have struggled ever since I could remember. And I couldn't understand why, we have people in leadership roles, but the people that I know, people of color are still struggling, and how can they be struggling for decades? Like, it didn't make any sense.
Right.
And so I jumped in the race. I had a lot of people ask me, hey, is this something that you're interested in? You should run. Kind of just playing with it, and so, we started a campaign. It was kind of informal at first. It's like, yeah, we'll try it out, see how it was. But then, I really went out there, and, a lot of the stories that folks were telling me that they wanted to, bring to the table, or they wanted to see some change, it really, really resonated with me, because I'd been in Roxbury. I still live there to today, all my life. And so I'm like, this is something I can really do. So ended up winning, which was very surprising and shocking to me, but I really put in the work to be able to get to where I am today.
And I think you were the first candidate to even have all of the signatures, right? Like 500 plus signatures in her race.
I know everybody, man.
Like and so you jumped in late, and you were the first.
Did you jump in?
And you were the first.
It was like the latest it could possibly be, like super last minute. But again, my family. So I'll go back a little bit. I'm actually a fifth generation Bostonian. My family's moved up to 7 now. My family's from Albany Street Projects, now known as Orchard Gardens. You'll kill me if I said Orchard Park, because that's what it is. Albany Street. Shout out to the original Albany Street and the Orchard Park folks. But we've been in Roxbury since forever, and so everybody, you turn a corner, my family, we know everyone in our neighborhood, so it was a no-brainer to be able to get love on that end, and having someone sign a paper saying, hey, you registered, can you support me? they knew me before I knew me, they knew me with my family before I came around, so I was very, very grateful for that support. I
love too that you always bring it back to the community, because I think some of the I wouldn't say controversy, but some of the feedback we've been getting too in conversations with people from the city of Boston is that Boston doesn't support its own, right? And or and when it comes to politics, even we are more inclined to support somebody who is a transplant and from another state, or in our city more so than the ones in our own backyard. So what was that experience like for you? Well, I hear you saying that your community supported you, right? The community of Roxbury. But what about the rest of the city of Boston? What does support look like for you?
Yeah, the city of Boston, I'm a huge supporter when it comes to anybody that wants to be here, especially if you're born and raised here. It's very, very hard if you're born and raised here, or if you call Boston home, whether you've been here for a while. It's a place where you want to be able to excel. I know many of my friends that went off to college, or they moved once they became an adult, and they came back once they, decided they want to come back home, and having a really, really hard time trying to just latch on, trying to get a job, trying to just get connected.
Yeah,
it's almost impossible to get connected if you leave. And so a lot of what I do is very, very focused around that, making sure that if you want to be here and this is a place that you want to call home, and you want to make an impact, we're going to create a pathway for upward mobility for you. So there's that.
I love it. And as a woman of color, I gotta put it out there. Talk to us about that experience. So you're walking in, you're in politics, local politics. Yes, I know dynamics are changing. Women of color are like doing it, but we weren't always doing it. We weren't always there. So what has the experience been like for you as a Black woman, an African American, as a state representative, and as a mom?
I get this question a lot. It's very interesting. When I first came in, there was a woman. I was one of two Black women there. Former Senator Linda Dorsina Ford, who actually served on the trustees. We're both trustees for the Boston Public Library now in our new roles. But she was one of the two only Black women. She's actually Haitian American. You guys know her, and so she ended up resigning. She moved on to where she is now in her role. And so for a short period, I was actually the only Black woman in the State House for a while, my first term. But if you know me, I love everybody. I get along with anybody. I don't really see color. It's not about that. I mean, I know Boston has this, underlying themes. But when it comes to me, I don't really see color. It's about the work and what we need to get done. And for me, it's about making sure that the issues that we have, as far as the communities of color, they've really never been in the forefront when it comes to state policy. And so that, coupled with, my willingness to be able to work with anybody. I mean, I work with anybody. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, whatever it is. I'm willing to work with you. So I don't really see that as an issue. But, and I do go through things in the building or out the building, just out there in the world, just being a woman of color. But, you are how you respond.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you feel like you have a sense of responsibility, or as a woman of color, to support other people of color, or is it more like you said, you're putting the needs of people in general first?
Absolutely. You got to support your own, especially if they're from Boston. I mean, if you're from Boston, I automatically love you. Like, there's no color automatically support you. But if you start trying to divide things and see color, I mean, you just got to come and fight for what you know is right. And it just happened to be that I'm a woman of color. I come from community of color. I represent the community of color. So a lot of the issues that you will see me put in the forefront are issues of communities of color. So.
Nice.
And how about being a mom?
Being a mom.
Juggling it all. Like a mom.
It's good.
You said you were in college when you had her, right?
Yeah.
So you had to learn to juggle
that
balance.
Juggle it all.
That's life. My daughter, she's awesome. She started 3rd grade this year. So
nice.
She's I don't know, she's growing up on me. It's other kids are influencing her. She used to
love. She's at that age.
Yeah, she used to love Skechers sneakers and light up shoes and all that, like glitter and stuff like that. So this year she wanted her first pair of Nikes, and I'm like, all right, we'll go to Nike and see what you want, but you can only get 1 pair. Before you used to get 5 pairs.
Yeah.
Get 1 pair, so she picks the most expensive sneakers on there, and I'm like, you better wear those things every day. But
I remember them days.
I know, you're trying to keep
shoes.
up,
I'm really about the culture, and I love shoes. As you can see right now, I have on, my 13s today. So she's a tall girl too, so I'm able to give her a lot of my shoes. So it's working out a little bit. We get the 2 for 1.
Yeah. So you can rock mine. Like Mike's. People are like Mike's situation, but it's like Chynah.
Yeah,
I love it. Fine dining.
What's one of the most significant or personal decisions you had to make to achieve the position that you're in today?
Significant or personal decisions? Every day is. I feel like that's an everyday question. Sometimes some days are harder than others. Again, I'm one of 200 legislators. I'm probably the youngest when it comes to just the lay of the land. There are a couple other gentlemen that are younger than me, but being a woman of color, again, I told you I'm the chair of the Boston delegation, and being the chair and having my colleagues vote for me was huge because I'm the youngest of the Boston delegation. And so some, you have issue areas that come to the forefront that are sometimes a difficult conversation for someone who didn't grow up in the city or didn't grow up or didn't, have the same experience that I had or don't understand what it's like to be in a city. Again, we live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts where you have someone that never left the country come down to the city and are fighting for their issues also. So you just got to keep showing up. And if you show up, and my method is just making sure that folks understand where I'm coming from, because I can't from, and I'm the vice versa. I'm open to be able to learn where you're coming from, and so what can we do to work our best to be able to get something done? So it's all about a collaborative effort to get anything done. So I really love working with people. I'm a people person, so and if it can't get done, then hopefully we can try again another time when folks are more able or ready to be able to go down that road. So.
Right. It sounds like communication is super important,
Yeah.
right? The ability to listen actively.
Yeah.
You know, we say it all the time. It's like there's hearing and there's listening, right?
Absolutely,
where you're just like, are you engaging in conversation simply to state your own point, or are you engaging in it to really understand?
A lot of those
both
people
sides?
out there,
right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, are you done? Okay,
I know.
all right. So
Yeah,
that's what I was trying
I'm
to
just
say.
ready to respond.
Right, you know. In that work, but in thinking about that though, have you ever been approached to maybe pass some type of like policy of sorts or engage in a conversation for something you didn't necessarily believe in? And like, how do you navigate through that?
Well, I wanted to just make a comment about the question. It's not really about what I believe in. I represent 40,000 people, so at any given time I have to have their best interest in the forefront and put my pride aside, put my thoughts and whatever I'm thinking aside. Of course, I use my experience and my expertise to help, bring that to the forefront and elevate that and hopefully pass legislation. But we have difficult conversations all the time. I'm learning every day. I feel like we're learning about like healthcare prices. We're learning about prescription prices. I might be an expert. I might be a medical doctor by the time I leave this place. You really become really well rounded when you become a representative or a senator or just a legislature in general. So. We have difficult conversations every day, but you have to be willing to just understand and just fight for what's best in the best interest of the people that you're representing. And for me, that's the folks at Roxbury. So
that's it. So tell us more about so state representative.
Yes.
Like, what does that role mean? Like, what does that look like on a local level for the people?
Right.
Versus like a city councilor.
Right. So I get this question a lot, and this is very important for the viewers out there to understand. So there are 3 levels of government. There's federal, there's state, and there's city. Yep. Just in that level, I'm right in the middle at the state government. And so in this state government body, you have 2 bodies. You have the House of Representatives, which I'm one of 160. And then you have the Senate, which is there are 40 senators. So in total, there are 200 legislatures. And that food chain also is the governor of Massachusetts. And so when it comes to being a legislator, I do have 2 major roles. The first role is to be able to create policy, which is then pushed out to be able to be interpreted either by a judge and or whoever is interpreting that to be able to implement programs and policy or whatever it is that folks, whatever we're working on. And we cover a wide variety of issue areas. So if you look back, I told you that I'm a part of four different committees. So how they divvy out that policy work is that they split it up into different committees. So they're called committees. And so there are several different committees. I don't have the exact number right now, but my focal points when it comes to the committee work, they're kind of like smaller working groups.
Gotcha.
And so education is one of the committees that I'm on, which right now we're actually working on a really, really big education reform bill, and hopefully I'm super optimistic that we'll be able to get something done. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, which is kind of like the bank account of the state where, so we have a multi-billion-dollar budget. How are we going to spend this money? So I'm on that committee. I'm on the Public Safety Committee. For me, that's, combating gun violence. For others, it may mean something different. So the formal committee is Public Safety and Homeland Security. And I happen to also be the vice chair of the Public Health Committee, which is, you guys know, all things health related. So that's pretty much how it's divvied out. And
did you get to select the committees, or were you nominated, or were you like voluntold?
Yeah, so they place you based off of your background. So you want to be able to provide the most impact you possibly can. So they place you based off of your areas of expertise.
Yeah, because I was wondering. I was like, okay, how do you get to choose that? Okay,
that makes sense to you guys.
Absolutely. Listen, we gotta educate our listeners.
Exactly.
If y'all looking to run, know what you're running for.
If folks are interested in the issue topic, there's a committee for that, and the committees have hearings on all these different issue topics. So if you have an opinion, I know there's a lot of folks with opinions out there. Don't hesitate to reach out and share your opinion, because that's how we can create the most informed policy that we can create. So what's happening is that, I told you before me, there are very minimal folks of color just in general running for office. And so what happens is, if you're running for office and if you're sitting at a table and you're trying to create policy and you don't have everybody possible that should be at the table, you're going to create misinformed policy. So it's important to be able to have as many people at the table as possible to share their experiences, so that when we're creating policy, that it makes a big impact on the folks that it's affecting. So
absolutely. When are these meetings, or how can people actually share their voices?
Yeah.
So the State House has a website,
Okay.
and so the hearings happen every week on a wide variety of issue topics. Every committee has hearings, so and even if they aren't having hearings, you're always welcome to reach out. Again, it's a public building.
Yeah.
Someone asked me the other day, how much does it cost to get into the State House? And I'm like, it's free. It's a public building. So even if you just walk in and walk around, I do a lot of hosting our youth at the State House. Again, I'd never been in a State House building before I even worked there, so I didn't.
Been on the outside to walk
so you guys are welcome. I invite you both to come and visit.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
if folks want to visit and come in, they're more than welcome. But I do a lot of ensuring that our community has that experience, and I take them personally on a tour and walk them through the State House so that they feel at home when they walk into those buildings, because it is the people's house, and you should feel comfortable walking into the building.
So do you encourage the citizens to come out and come to these hearings? Is it something
Absolutely.
that would benefit?
Absolutely, because again, we use that information in the hearings to be able to create the policy that we then pass as a real bill that the governor signs. So the more voices that we have in those hearings, the better our policy would be. So for example, I'll give you an example right now. Public Safety Committee. I'm on a Public Safety Committee. We had our first hearing on firearms, and that room was packed with people that weren't from communities like ours.
Okay.
A lot of them were anti the things that we're experiencing, but anti just our thoughts in general. But the issue is that we're experiencing gun violence, homicides on a completely different level than anyone is. And it's not that we're trying to infringe on folks' Second Amendment rights. We're trying to stop the illegal trafficking of firearms so that the next young girl from Roxbury like me doesn't have to experience losing their loved one, their brother, to
or getting
gun
shot
violence.
at the park with their father.
Right. It's a traumatic experience, and that's something that changes the dynamic of our families in general. Sometimes some folks never come back from that, and right now our families are broken. Sometimes they do a really good job at trying to separate the family, only talk about the child, only talk about the woman, only talk about the man, only talk about one aspect. But in actuality, we're a family and we're a unit, and we need to move together. And so a lot of what I do is making sure that we're treating the family when it comes to healing in general. So there's that.
I love it. Seriously. I mean, I just feel like that's like super deep too, and it's very realistic for people to think about, because I think, you've said a lot. When I think about you, right, as a person who's from the local city of Boston community, you were schooled here, you were bred here, you experienced your own trauma here, but you're accessible still, right? And you still try to invite people who might not necessarily always have an opportunity to be in the room to be in the room. Do you ever fear your safety in this work? And like, what do you say to yourself every day to get up and say, yes, I'm for my city. Yes, I know violence is high. Yes, I know some people are angry, but I'm still just gonna go out.
I mean, I don't really
have
fear in my heart or anything. Really, we're gonna get the job done regardless if people are with it or not. Again, to lose somebody to gun violence, like that feeling is a feeling that I never wish on anybody, but it's happening way too often, and it's almost normalized in the Black community, and that's not normal, and it's okay for that not to be normal. So I know a lot of people are going to funerals more than they go to college graduations and positive celebrations, and it's not normal. So I'm doing whatever I can to make sure that folks don't have to experience that trauma, because again, a lot of folks don't come back from that. So when you talk about all the the glass ceilings when it comes to our community and not being healed, like that's where a lot of that stems from, not being healed, and a lot of that is circled around gun violence and homicides,
Absolutely.
So.
And breakage from generational trauma too, right? So it's like the legacy continues. So it's just like, it's not just the person who's impacted by it right now, it's the grandparents, the great grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the people's generations back.
So you gotta like show that in a positive light though too. So just recently actually, so I have a couple of bills that I filed to be able to try to combat the illegal trafficking of firearm. So that's what I do on a policy level when it comes to gun violence. Obviously, gun violence is one of the many issue areas that's at the forefront for me, but also when it comes to advocacy and uplifting victims of gun violence. Like, I mean, you hear about the story for 20 seconds on the news and like it's done, and you never hear about it ever again. But for me, that's unacceptable. So actually recently, over at Malcolm X Park, you guys know the pool over there? At the Melanie A. Cass Center, we just recently built a spray deck through the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation. And and the opportunity arose to be able to name the spray deck something. And so I put forth the bill to be able to name it after a young woman, Chynah Tyler, who was hit by a stray bullet a couple years ago, not too long ago, randomly in Roxbury and Warren Gardens. So actually just last week we unveiled that where her mom and her family, we got to share that experience.
Wow.
But, you know, taking something negative and turn it into positive. Now her family can always go back and be able to, you know, see her in a positive light. She was a lifeguard, so that's why it kind of makes sense. I didn't want to like, you know, draw the connection because I know folks were making that connection at first, but she was a lifeguard and she taught a lot of kids a skill that, again, people of color don't necessarily do swim. You know, so that was very, very monumental to me. So I'm glad I got to share that with the Taylor family. So shout out to the Taylor family from Roxbury.
That's that
awesome.
history. That's the heart. That's the soul. That's like everything. That's what warms my heart. I'm like, that's so beautiful. So painful, but so beautiful, right? To be able to do that.
We do a lot, you know, when it comes to the positive aspect. I mean, we have to do a lot of events. Again, like folks are really discouraged from participating in government or just discouraged in general. I mean, when I was young, we used to go everywhere, like right in our neighborhood. I don't even really think I left my neighborhood until I was like maybe 10, 11, because everything was right there, and that sense of community has been lost, and I do my best to try to recreate that as much as possible. So I have a lot of events, so you see something I post on my Instagram, follow me, Chynah Tyler, come on out, you're welcome.
So
thank you for, and you spoke at one of my events too recently, my annual event, so thank you, that's awesome.
Beautiful, thank you for having me.
So,
ice cream and all.
That's what you remember, the ice cream?
I remember a lot of things. I remember people doing a lot of amazing artwork. Talk about what Roxbury looks like. Don't come for me. I remember an amazing spoken word artist, dope DJs.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I believe you. One thing I wanted to ask you, with you just starting out, do you have somebody that you rely on, somebody that you go to for mentorship or for any type of questions?
Somebody I rely on.
In your role.
Let's see.
Or someone you want to emulate or anything like that.
Somebody I want to emulate. I think that we can learn something from everyone. There've been a lot of different people in different roles when it comes to government. And just in the community, I do a lot of amazing things. In my role, again, I have to juggle being a state rep, being a mom, being an advocate, being a policymaker, being this, being that. And so I think everybody that's supportive of me is probably just as equally important as the next. So I don't want to single out anybody because I start getting into that, and then they'll be, why did you say me? But if I were to say somebody, it would definitely be my family. I mean, yeah.
What's it like for your daughter watching you be a state rep and do a lot of this work? Because you were in this role. I mean, she's 8 now. You said, right? So it's been since you were getting started.
Yeah.
So does she understand?
Yeah.
Is she supportive?
Oh yeah, no, she understands.
You
know, it's kind of, it was interesting when I first started. She was very, very young, so it's kind of like what she knows. It's her normal. She doesn't really know anything else. That she doesn't know about any jobs I had prior to this. This is what she's grown into. So I mean, I bring her with me everywhere. I don't have a babysitter. My mom, my grandma, and my brother tell me no. I mean, she's got to roll with me, but she's a good kid. Everybody in the state house knows her. She's a really good kid, so she's fine with it. She just
she's taller than me.
She's
taller.
taller.
Everybody's taller than me.
What?
Yep.
Yeah, she's a whole 2.5 inches taller than me.
She's this gentle giant though. She's so sweet though.
And I'm more than double her age, but it's fine. It is what it is. I mean. She doesn't
She was nice to you, right?
Yeah,
she was nice,
super sweet.
She's
but
looking down at you like.
Literally, and I'm like, hey, looking up, like, how are you? Because she's 8. She wasn't always 8.
Wow.
Right, that's what I was just like, I'm like, he was younger than that, which is wild.
That's funny, but yeah.
I love it. Thinking more about, your role, too, and your responsibility, how do you, what are some things that you process and work through when you're thinking about creating policies or visions that are fully reflective of different generations in one? Because I feel like a lot of the conversations we have in Boston, at least more so recently, really focus on the younger generation or millennials and really building them up and out, but we do have a lot of older people ahead of us, right? That also have voices and that have opinions, or maybe are being aged out and aren't being supported, elderly, you know what I mean? Right. Like how are their voices? What do you think about when you're including them?
I think one of my top priorities is to ensure that all of us can be able to age well in Boston. So that just goes to show that, it's just as important to be able to support the youth and preventing them from going down the wrong path just as much as it is to support someone who's older and is aging in Boston. And so I think, my family, again, from here, I have a lot of old school Bostonians in my family, so I know how to deal with them. They're very particular group of folks. And when I first became a state representative, just being very young, being 27 years old when I first started, you do experience that kind of pushback with the older generation saying, hey, like, this is how you should do it. But, that's, me, that's just not how it's going to work. It's going to go the way it was best for everyone. So I think I do a pretty good job at incorporating everyone when it comes to things. Again, it's just inviting folks to the table, because if it weren't for them, our ancestors and our folks that came before us, they died for a lot of the things that we're doing today for voting. So when I'm trying to encourage folks to get out and vote and just kind of be engaged, I got to kind of remind them of what our folks that came before us went through, and then they'll be more likely to be able to come along with you. So I really respect them, and I invite them to the table, and hopefully they see that different than what's happened in the past in general, just feeling cut off from the process and because of their age. So any people that are 65 plus out there, I know they love their senior group, being called a senior group. If you're interested, if you have any ideas for me, if you see something that I'm not doing that you would like me to do, reach out to me, because I'm more than happy to be able to take you up on a question and try to figure out how we can combat whatever issue it is that you have.
It's amazing.
Nice. So what's one policy that you think that you see in the city that you would want to work on that's not available right now, that would help change, whether it's Roxbury or just Boston in general?
One policy, so we talked about the guns. So right now, I'll give you a couple. So the first one is that we have a big issue with the illegal trafficking of firearms. Last year, there were about 1,900 guns that were received that were illegal firearms. And a big bulk of them are actually manufactured here in Massachusetts. Oh, wow. So before we talk about other states, we have an issue in our own state when it comes to illegal trafficking of firearms. And the issue is that those guns don't end up somewhere safe, in a safe somewhere. They end up on a crime scene, and what happens is that our loved ones are being the victims behind those guns. And so when you have issues like that, you have folks asking, oh, well, why this person shoot this person or whatever it is. We have our issue. We have a big socioeconomic gap right now in the city of Boston. So, the reason why one would want to pick up a gun, that's a no-brainer, because there's no resources and there's nothing for them to be able to do. There's nothing for them to get into, and there's no jobs available, So I'm a big supporter of that. But more importantly, it's like, how did this gun even slip through the cracks and get to someone that is not a legal licensed person to be able to have this firearm? And so some of the policy when it comes to guns is being able to try to plug those loopholes when it comes to that illegal trafficking of firearms, so that if you're a licensed gun owner, again, we want to make sure that your Second Amendment rights, again, that's not my forte. You can keep your guns, it is what it is. Like, I'm not trying to infringe on your rights, but the moment that you do things out of order, that you're gonna be held responsible for that, because we're, as people of color, we lose from behind that. And so recently there was an officer that was found guilty of giving firearms to folks that shouldn't have firearms, that weren't licensed to carry. And he was given a slap on the wrist sentence. I think it was either 3 months and or probation. This was recently, last year, in federal court here in Massachusetts. However, if it were you or your loved one or your brother, somebody else, they'd go away for a very long time. And then they'd have a Corey, and then they'd be in the system forever, because that cycle of being on probation and all that never stops. So plugging those policy holds folks accountable just as much as our folks are being held accountable. So that's one line of policy that I think is interesting. The other is education. I have a couple of bills out there to be able to ensure that our children are excelling in the manner in which we know they can. A lot of folks count our kids out when it comes to excelling academically in general, because they just do. And so the issue is that the curriculum isn't really sensitive or isn't really tailored to the needs of our students. So actually, right now, we have a lot of schools, particularly in my district, in Roxbury, a little bit, Dorchester, Fenway, South End, schools that are historically failing. And it's like, how do you allow for a school to be able to historically fail children, but they're still going from first grade to 12th grade, and then when it gets out of 12th grade, they're set up for failure. And honestly, that's unacceptable for me, because that could be my daughter, or that could be people that I know. These the kids go to these schools, and that's unacceptable for me to be able to be a policymaker. My job is to make sure that our children are having the best academic experience that they can. Again, I had that going to school, and that they're set up for greatness, whether they decide to go to college or join the police force, join the workforce, join the union, whatever it is. But we owe it to our children to be able to have a great academic experience. And right now, going to a failing school is not allowing for them to be able to do that.
Right.
So I have a couple of different policies out there to be able to test some programming that works. So one of the bills that I'm most proud about is my bill to be able to test kind of what works out there. So the bill pretty much allows for us to say if you're a teacher and you have a really, really good program that you want to try to put forth. Because again, as a teacher, you're in your classroom, you know your students better than anyone knows your students.
Exactly.
And you only really have one option to teach those students, which is a curriculum that's provided for you. But you should be able to kind of go out the box a little bit and kind of tailor, your curriculum around your students so they can love school. That's your job, is to make them love school. So this pot of money would be able to allow for us to be able to fund that so we can figure out what works. So, because kind of what we have right now, I mean, if you look at our numbers as far as success, like, our students really aren't excelling, and I know that they can. I was that student, like, education took off of me when I went to Roxbury Prep Charter School. I can't necessarily say I liked school that much when I was in K through 5. It was really all a blur for me, but once I got to that school, like, learning was fun, and learning should be fun. So that's something that I'm pushing on the education level. We're actually crafting a really, really big policy, education policy reform 2.0. So the first one that we did was way back in, it wasn't me, we then, I was like 3 back then, but it was back in 1993 when we did our first ed reform, which allowed for different education avenues for our kids to go down different schools to be able to be built. And unfortunately, we got to where we are today. So what we did back then, some of the aspects of it were successful, but we're trying to do a 2.0 version right now to make sure that in 20 years from now, we aren't where we are today. We're historically failing schools. So hopefully we can get something done this year. I'm on the education committee. So hopefully we get something done. What else can I think about? Education, housing. Right now, folks are being evicted at like astronomical rates, and they don't know their rights. And when you go to court, if it's just you going to court random and you say, "Hey, I don't have enough money, I'm indigent, I can get a lawyer for free," but when you go to housing court, that's not the same. So I have a bill actually that I actually got from the mayor. It's a home rule petition that I filed with Mayor Walsh to be able to make sure that when folks go to housing court, should they be evicted, that they have a lawyer automatically, regardless of what their situation is, so we can keep folks in their homes. Because once you're homeless, like that just opens up the floodgates for a bunch of issues. What else is there? Marijuana. I was very, very proud to work on a marijuana bill last year to legalize marijuana in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That was a big thing for me last year. And so I have a couple of bills to be able to make sure that that industry, again, we've created a new industry, and the folks that were behind the 8 ball, which is folks that look like us, were more likely to be criminalized behind that prior to it being passed. So once it's passed, I want to make sure that our folks are in the forefront and make sure that they're benefiting the most. So I actually have 2 policies that I put forth, and I'm actually working on something in the budget, which I'll tell you about, to be able to make sure that we can benefit from the marijuana industry. So the 2 bills, the first one is to ensure that folks can't be tested for marijuana if you go for a job. I mean, if it's legal, why should we be tested for it?
That makes sense.
I know a lot of folks out there be very, very happy about that because, again, in our community, so a lot of folks use marijuana as a coping mechanism and not because they want to do a drug. It's a coping mechanism. It's just a coping mechanism of choice in our community. So that's one. And the second bill around marijuana is to be able to expunge folks' records. I mean, if it's going to be legal, then get rid of the records.
Exactly. Because we're one of the few states that made it legal but has not expunged any records or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm going to call on all my other colleagues and all that to be able to be supportive.
Like,
I mean, there's
and
no reason.
I've been wondering about that,
targeted with those records too, when it comes to the city and access. And
so also too, so that's policy when it comes to that, but on a budget level, I'm actually trying to make moves when it comes to marijuana. So just this past budget, I was able to pass a line item for $50,000 to be able to test the feasibility of creating a marijuana industry-related degree program. So not only are we taking care of it when it comes to the business and you owning a storefront and you owning a growing site or whatever it is, but on an academic level, you should be able to receive your degree from that. So the money's out there. We're working to see if it's actually feasible to be able to test. And hopefully, down the line, we'll have some schools that you can actually get your degree. And we're not talking a bachelor's of arts. I'm not trying to down it, but we're not talking a small certificate program. We're talking about this is a STEM related degree program that you can actually excel and make enough money to be able to live in the city.
Well, it's chemistry too, right? So that's really what it is.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, when you think about the sciences, and it's interesting too because I think that would be a way that we make STEM more relatable to folks, right? So when we talk about education, as you talked about, valuing that and prioritizing it, I also feel like part of our challenge in our system is that our content is not relatable. Like, young people don't see how this is in
what's
fact
that to do with me?
Right. And I'm like, no.
Everything
it has everything to do with your life, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, but you do math every day when you think about when you wake up and how long it takes you to get to school and how much money you need for this or that. Or, when I think about young people who love to do makeup, this is an example I use all the time. Like, social media is so prevalent in the lives of young people, like in a different kind of way now, right? Just them, they understand these algorithms more than anybody. I'm like, that's math. That's like critical thinking.
But they're not tying it together
at all. Like when they do makeup, right? And I'm like, how are you putting these different color palettes
really
together?
That's
chemistry. Like, let's talk about how like that color doesn't look good on me, and I'm like, oh, so you know, documentation and colors. Right, but again, I support it 1,000%.
And also too, really quickly too, before we move on. So this one bill is my baby bill. So when we talk about all these issue areas, I talked about how we have committees across all these issue areas. The one demographic of individuals that are suffering from all these different issue areas of Black men and Black boys. So I have a bill to be able to establish a commission on a social status of Black men and Black boys, so that we can be able to level the playing field and allow for them to be able to excel. Over 60-something% of the population in prisons are Black men and Black boys, and we're only 12% of the population here in Massachusetts. So there's a mismatch there. So I'm just really trying to make sure that we can provide pathways of upward mobility for folks that look like you and I, and for the city of Boston in general.
With all of this amazing work in mind, where do you see yourself being in 5 years?
Yeah, that's funny. I get that question a lot. I answer it different every single time, but I feel like my staple, what I want to say, I thought about it because folks kept asking me, and I don't really, honestly, I work my behind off every day to make sure that I'm doing the best I can do, and be the best I can be, and I learn as much as possible, and that I'm as sensitive to everyone's issue topic as I can possibly be. And so if you prepare yourself every day for the next opportunity, when opportunities arise, you'll be able to be prepared to take it. So I can't really say where I'll be in 5 years from now. Hopefully it'll be up from here, if anything. But I'm just really working my behind off so that if an opportunity arises, just like, when I became a state rep, it was random. I was 26. I'm just like,
Right,
so
why not?
Work hard, folks.
Assume position.
Work hard, folks.
My last question to you is, what advice would you give somebody who is assuming some type of leadership position for the first time to be able to push through that? As you say, you work hard.
Advice, I'm all about the youth and making sure that they have an opportunity to grow. Always giving advice to my interns. We're like real friends in real life. They call me like my interns are my real friends. But if I can give folks a piece of advice, if they're interested in government in general, is that don't worry about what people think about you. At the end of the day, you're going to be the only you. I'm the only me a lot of the times when I'm in the room. I'm having to deal with the issue topic or combat an issue or create policy. But, your experience is just as equal as anybody else's experience. So the moment when you start worrying about what other people think about you, you're off your game. So don't worry about what everybody thinks about you, because honestly, it doesn't matter. So that's from my mom directly. So
Nice.
Quoting mom.
So where can people follow you? How can they get in touch with you if they need to speak about policy, Instagram, social media, everything, telephone numbers?
My telephone number, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Chynah Tyler, CHYNAH. My last name Tyler, TYLER. So just Google me. I'm everywhere. If they want to get in touch with me, they can reach out. All my information is accessible through all my social media platforms, and probably see me in the community again. If you go to Roxbury, you'll probably be very, very likely to see me. I do have office hours every first Thursday. I don't expect folks to come down to downtown to the State House because parking is atrocious and you will get a ticket and there's no parking anyways. So I have office hours every first Thursday at the Dunkin' Donuts right next to Bartlett Station. I don't have the exact address, but if you go on my website, it's posted there. On my Instagram, it's there. Every first Thursday in Roxbury and every third Thursday over in Fenway at Blaze Pizza Shop. So I'm accessible. If you reach out, I'll respond. I love being on Instagram and watching what other people are doing. I'm a huge supporter of people, young people just like me, up and coming. And I reach out to folks to see, how I can be supportive. A lot of the folks that I meet that are like me, I reach out to them first. I don't ever wait for folks to reach out to me. So I'm super accessible. So just reach out and I'll definitely respond back.
And I'll say my shameless plug for that is I'm a living testament of that. Seriously, When I think about how long Chynah and I have just been chopping it up and getting to know each other and building our own friendship, it's literally like that. Just seeing each other do this work in the community, for the city, in education, stomping grounds at Northeastern, we were like, I see you.
Okay.
You see me.
Random, right? Because I was like, hey, I like what you're doing. And then we just like had coffee one day and we've been best friends ever since.
That's it.
That's how it is
Nice,
sometimes.
supporting each other. It's that simple.
Yep.
So, make it happen.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
thank you so much, Chynah,
Thank you
for
so
being
much for
here.
having me. I really appreciate you guys making time for me.
Listen, we're super grateful. Again, Boston's own. For all of you listeners out there who are debating like whether or not Boston is supportive of you, whether or not you can actually make change happen in your own community, you can in fact make that happen in your neighborhood, in your city, and in your state. So
I support you.
listen, Chynah supports you. The Urban Collective supports you. Go out there, be great. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks but yourself.
Yes,
Thriving.
yeah.
So it's your girl Bernadine Truth,
And Chynah and IC.
and we'll be right back.
Nice. Thank you. That live was I was trying to read